You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
Hey Jeepers, welcome to another episode of On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. Scott probably will tell me what episode.
137, I think.
Okay, 137.
You caught me. See, guys, it gets me back.
Well, and I'm Kevin. If you haven't figured that out by now, if you're a longtime listener, you'll know. But if you're not, if you're new to it, I'm an engineer, and I'm kind of the general Jeep tech guy, and I like to read instructions and use the right tools and follow those instructions most of the time, unless I'm feeling really creative.
Yeah, and I am Scott. I am the slapstick parts guy that does not read instructions, does not have a torque wrench unless I borrow it from Kevin's, and I like to speak from the heart.
Yeah, he's not exactly true on that. He does read instructions.
Shh. Hey, come on, man.
I know, I can't destroy your mystique.
Yeah, I got street cred here, homie. But remember, while we will share what worked for us and as well as what didn't, it's really up to you to decide to do what you want to your Jeep. So do your research, read the instructions.
And as we always say, please follow them.
Yes, please follow.
The guys that wrote them really would like you to at least try to follow them.
Exactly. And here comes the best part about following instructions is that, so the last time we talked on the show, I did all the fluid exchanges for the Gladiator. Mm-hmm. And I actually went ahead and started doing some on the LJ. So.
Yeah, you decided to give the old girl some love, huh?
Well, what's funny is I've been driving the Gladiator so much. The last oil change I did on the LJ was in, unfortunately, August of 2021. No. Sorry, it was September of 2021. Okay. And so I wasn't doing an oil change till January, and I do every 5,000 miles. Mm-hmm. I'd only gone 3,000 miles.
Yeah.
Which is good. I'm low mileage on the LJ, but now the Gladiator has 50K on it.
Yeah, but on the other hand, on the low mileage ones, you need to change it to make sure you remove condensation moisture that collects when they sit.
Well, I did have a brief moment of panic because when I dropped the fluid in the diffs, it was black. I'm like, oh that's right, I have royal purple.
And it turns kind of a little darker color quickly. No, you don't have a little diesel engine running in your diff.
No, but Jesse, one of our listeners, kind of asked a quick question about, hey, I got a 4.0 and with 80,000-ish miles on it. And he asked what oil, and I know we talked about this before, but I just use, because again, I'm cheap, and it has 170,000 miles on it. I use the boxed oil. It's a Texaco Haviland stuff, and it's the high mileage oil, and it's like $18 as of now at Walmart. Your prices may vary. And a bottle of STP Blue Zinc is what I use. And because, again, I'm cheap. And two, the zinc additive really, it might be car gnomes and unicorn fart. I have no idea, but it seems to work. And help me with this. I want to make sure I get this correct. We have the flat tappet lifters or something like that.
We have flat base hydraulic lifters in the 4.0s. They are not technically a flat tappet because that usually refers to solid lifters. Okay. And we're not into solid lifters and adjustable valve train, with little bolts, unless you've made that swap. In which case you definitely would be adding a zinc additive to your oil because modern oils do not include zinc. It is considered a heavy metal pollutant. So if you don't need it, don't run it.
Right.
But in our case, we have hydraulic lifters, but they are flat bottom lifters and are not roller type, and they do run hard on the cam. And that is a very high pressure, high heat environment, and the zinc additive goes a long way to keeping things happy and functional. So can't argue with that.
Yeah, they say it will eventually damage the catalytic converters, but at this point, I'm like, you know what? At 170 miles, I need all the help she can get right now.
and the other side of the story, I run typically a Mobil 1, either a 1030 or a 1040, depending on the temperatures outside. Right. And I do have new cats all the way around. I had to splurge for those when I was having the the O2 fiascos that turned out to actually be the computer, not the O2 sensors.
Yeah.
But in the process, so I'm not really ready to heavy metal poison my cats.
Well, and then the fun part was doing the transfer case because, me, not reading instructions and cutting corners. It's kind of like my MO, by the way. Oh, and for those who are asking, no, the lift is not installed, nor is the seat yet.
Not yet. Life has intervened once again, but I will ride herd on him until he does.
You know what's scary?
What?
Jeep Beach will be 1 year we've had the winch for the Gladiator storage.
Yeah, I know where it's stored too.
I'm horrible. But anyways, so Jesse, thanks for your email. I really appreciate that.
Now, we want to get into a few Facebook and YouTube technical glitches. This one goes out to Nick G. We've seen some comments from Nick in Facebook, as well as, I guess, the YouTube link that is auto-created by our hosting service. And they create a no video version for YouTubers who can click on our podcast and listen to us through YouTube as opposed to iTunes or,
Oh, and we are still working on Stitcher, by the way.
So anyhow, Nick, we're not ignoring you. You gave us a post. All we got was the header that said, "Where's the pick?"
Yeah.
It won't let us reply to your post. We can't open it. We can't do anything.
God, I love technology.
It's driving us nuts. But Scott and I sat here and figured out what you were talking about. And what you can do is if you go back into the Facebook posting and scroll down there, it's a little ways down now, and you'll see when I was working on the small green TJ doing the rust repairs, the picture that was referred to that you didn't get to see because, of course, the YouTube link doesn't include any videos or pictures, is basically a pile of rust.
Yeah.
About, I don't know, 2 or 3 feet in diameter and about a foot tall. And it was a tongue-in-cheek joke that was when I was sweeping all this stuff up after bashing off the rusty parts of the frame and the beat-up sheet metal. I got comment from the guys at the shop going, "Oh, nice cleaning up all that crud." I said, "Hey, no, that's not crud. Those are Jeep parts, some assembly required."
That's the next Jeep project.
Yeah, just a little bit of, I don't know, a blast furnace and some flux, and you could maybe get half a pound of metal back out of it and then hammer it out, roll it out, and turn it into Jeep parts, right?
You can make a hat.
So it was, honestly, we aren't ignoring you. We were trying to figure out how to make it work. And it just, like, let's just tell him on the show. It'll make it a whole lot easier. Yeah.
And sometimes, guys, it is just easier. And thank you, by the way, we did get some feedback about, using personal Facebook messages on our personal pages. And of course, a lot of people are like, "So sorry." I'm like, no, it's okay, guys.
It's okay. If we don't tell you, you couldn't know.
Exactly.
But my wife gets kind of weird when I get all kinds of weird messages.
Yeah. Half the time it's me half asleep going, "Hey, did you think about this idea?"
So another little feedback was thank you very, very much to a bunch of guys that took my little tongue-in-cheek post on drive shafts on the warranty issue. So I got to shout out, Will. You know who you are. I know who you are. You're absolutely right. Nick, again, same Nick, I believe. You said it very, very succinctly, and I'm going to share that with Shane. I think he'll appreciate the basic wording. And Nick writes, "Warranty covers defective parts or workmanship." It looks like that's neither of the two. And you're absolutely right, Nick. I
like Corey's response.
That's a hard no.
Yeah, it's sometimes less is more.
Yeah, this is true. And same thing with Britt. Britt M said the same thing. So guys, your thoughts kind of run with mine. I know people like to get things for free when they've screwed them up. But when I got asked to come out and do a quick look over, just, could this be defective, was from the guys that put it together. This wasn't from the owner. The owner's like, no, we're not going to warrant that.
Yeah.
But the guys that do the work take their job seriously. Could we have avoided this? Could this, is this something we did wrong?
It's R&D.
And I said, unless you can figure out how to keep steel from bending when it's overstressed. What blew my mind was, and the guys, it doesn't show as well as I thought it would in the picture, but the very first picture is 2 drive shafts right next to each other. One is a darker black and the other one's kind of crusty, and they just happen to be on the bench together. But if you look at that darker black one and you look at the U-joint with the snap ring in it and look at the edge nearest the double cardan H yoke is what it's called.
I see that now.
And that whole lip of the hole through the drive shaft yoke has been smashed over. And the only way it got smashed over, and I couldn't get a picture, is the inside of the H frame had been rolled way past contact. It didn't just go touch, touch, touch. It went pound, 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 pound until it actually beat. You could not get that cap out right now if you wanted to.
Someone did a full send.
Somebody did a full send on that. And the only thing we can figure is a hyperextension. He doesn't have limiting straps and needs them. The kit said, put 8-inch stroke shocks, and he put 15s. I don't know, but this drive shaft suffered a brutal overextension.
Yeah.
And, folks, if you want a story on that kind of stuff or a podcast, let us know if you have some more interest on it. I had a long talk with the owner of the company, and he says, this is the kind of thing that he gets in trouble with. He said, people are building Jeeps right now who don't know the dynamics of axle movement versus axle length.
Right.
And they're making suspension systems that go further than any known drive shaft system can accept. Mm-hmm. And he says the only way to get through that is some expensive thing. We talked about options. I have seen off-road vehicles where the transfer case was actually mated to a boat's V-drive.
Okay.
Which, a lot of boats, the prop comes out at a pretty steep angle.
Right.
And so they make these gearboxes with bevel gears that are face to face, not 90 degrees, but they might only be 22.5 degrees deflection. And you could do that. You could, go with a top loading differential. You can get that expensive. And if you look at monster trucks, how they do it is they get the very expensive divorce transfer case with a low output shaft. But any drive shaft has a limited degree of motion. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, when you exceed it, there's no cushion in that thing.
No, you're beating metal against metal.
And I'm sure that Jeep shook like a wet dog after whatever event they did.
Yeah.
So, guys, thank you though so much for everybody that chimed in on that. That was nice to hear your thoughts on it. And basically I didn't get a single person that came back and said, they should warrant that.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of fun to get your feedback and your because we want you guys to be engaged. We want our listeners to say, hey. And speaking of an engaged listener, Brandon, dude, let me tell you something. This person always brings really good questions to the table because it's actually one of the odd things I want to do to the LJ, and I'm going to do it here eventually. And I can hear you all saying it now, especially Brandon going, Scott, why don't you go ahead and buy the parts and sit on those too? That's fine. I get it. But you
can't say anything that I haven't already said to him.
Exactly. I'm my own worst enemy. But the best part was because Kevin actually answered it about a rough idle. I have a low rough idle, mm-hmm. and it is driving me bananas. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if this little idea and this quick little trick will help me.
It might. And the quick little trick is Brandon asked about the 4-pental change or multi-pental fuel injectors versus the factory single. Mm-hmm. And I answered him honestly, as honest as I could. This is one of those mods that is really hit or miss.
Right.
It will, if your problem is due to a fuel delivery, it can make all the difference in the world. But if your fuel delivery is working, you're going to be like, I spent all that money and I don't feel anything different.
Yeah.
The other thing to remember is that here's the tech behind it, and it's pretty straightforward. Gasoline, the liquid, this is going to sound weird, does not burn.
Right.
It's only the gaseous form, the vapor form of gasoline that actually combusts. If you've ever seen slow motion photography of a gas fire, you will notice the flames are up above the pool of liquid, where the heat is causing it to volatilize or evaporate, and then that vapor is what burns. The liquid itself does not. And I know that's counterintuitive, but trust me on that one, or if you've got to go research it. But yeah, gasoline has to volatilize to burn.
Please don't try this at home when you say research it.
Yeah, I'm talking about using the interwebs.
Yeah.
Or, go to a lab if you've got friends in the automotive world.
This is a good time to use Google.
Yeah. So what does that have to do with injectors? Well, in the old days, we had carburetors, which were bowls of gasoline held at a very precise level by a float, and then a venturi tube in the middle with a little angle pipe that kind of ran from the bottom of that bowl of gasoline into that pipe. And just like if you've ever been a kid and stuck your straw in your drink and blew across the top of your straw and splattered your mother with your soda pop or your Coke or your Pepsi or whatever and got slapped 7 ways to Sunday.
I see.
Yeah. Welcome to the fact you just played carburetor, because that's how a carburetor works. Why is that critical? Because they're a long way away from that intake valve. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of time for that little splattering gasoline that comes out of what's called the emulsion tube to volatilize, okay, and get all the way down. And in fact, if liquid makes it all the way down to the combustion chamber, we have a term for that in the automotive world.
Hydrolock.
Flooded.
Oh, flooded. Oh.
Yeah, remember how you flooded it? Well, go away and let it evaporate for a while. It'll start again.
Yeah, pull the plugs.
Yeah, pull the plugs if they really get it. But when they came up with fuel injectors, we made the step from carburetors to the throttle body injection. Mm-hmm. Good old Chevy with their twin throttle bodies with the big old pulsing, injectors sitting on top that you could look at and see them going, spitting fuel down the throat. And it was neat because it actually did a finer spray than the emulsion tube. Mm-hmm. And it was really cool compared to the carburetor. And it also, because you started off real fine, small drops, there was less to volatilize, in each drop than there would be in those big dribbles. So you got really great atomization, or not atomization, but a evaporation of the gasoline. And they found out you could pull back the amount of gas. You didn't need as much. So you got better fuel economy with fuel injection. Great. But it was still a long way away, and the injector pulses weren't shooting directly to the cylinder. So you still had the classic carburetor problem of, under hard acceleration, front cylinders were lean, rear cylinders were rich. Okay? And so you overheated your front pistons. You drowned out your back ones. And the middle four were doing most of the work. So then they said, well, let's put the injectors one at a time up there on each intake runner. And that's when the first injectors really had some problems with hard starting. Most of you guys are not old enough to remember that.
Some of the brands I carry have a cold start injector.
Yeah. And that was because you took probably 8 inches of runner tube, which is a lot of time in the world of a gasoline engine, and you shortened it down to 3/4 of an inch. The back of the injector was firing right at the back of the plug. And if the nozzle wasn't fine enough, you actually flooded the engine with the right amount of gasoline to run, because it didn't have time to volatilize.
Yeah.
So then they started readjusting and creating the correct nozzle shapes to get the atomization. Jeep's injectors, the stock injectors, are single pintle. That simply is a fancy word for a hole with a needle in it. And the injector system uses that needle. It gets jerked back and let drop again, and that's what pulses that fuel through. And it's not a straight hole. That's why if you've ever read a tech manual, it says do not run a screwdriver or like a drill bit or anything through these holes to clean them. You will F it up because they're shaped very specifically.
Right.
And that's why when you see those ads for injector cleaners and they show these dribbly injectors that are kind of just dripping like a kid's nose on a cold winter day. Well, visualize, Scott. Work with me.
I don't feel so well.
Yeah, but they don't do that part.
I'm going to use the shirt sleeve to blow my nose. Unfortunately, I used my brother.
Okay, that wasn't planned. But anyhow.
Either with wiping my nose.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So when you're looking at this issue, the injectors. So in the 4-liter, the injector with a single pintle was sufficient for most situations. All right. First off, we all know that the 4-liter runs a bit warm, which makes gasoline volatilize all that much more quickly.
Yep.
If you've ever looked at the factory valves, they're not smooth on the back. They're kind of textured. They're a shot peened finish, except obviously in the seat area. That helps to scatter that injector pulse and create a finer mist to volatilize again.
Right.
So they did a pretty good job. Now, we come along when some crazy people put aluminum heads on with polished, stainless steel valves and with a swirl pattern on the back. And then we changed the airflow on the inlet to get a little higher velocity and volume and increase the velocity and volume of the exhaust. And because we're cramming more fuel and air in the cylinder in the same amount of time, what's that mean? It's got to move faster.
Right.
And I found that single pintle injectors didn't produce a fine enough spray pattern to actually fully volatilize. And I was getting pinging and knocking. And when you use a temperature gun and shoot your exhaust headers and you start looking at temperatures that are turning the metal blue, you realize that the fuel was still volatilizing and burning when the exhaust valve was opening. So I was getting a flame front out the exhaust. Not good thing with catalytic converters. And also kind of like sending all your extra power out the tailpipe. Right. So not a cool situation.
Literally. Yeah. I'm sorry. That joke was hot.
Okay, things are back to normal.
No. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to sick burn you like that.
He's not going to stop, folks, so I just have to keep rolling. And I found and this is going back when it was a new thing, that you could go get a Fomoco, Ford Motor Company injector that was 4 pintles, and it was in Mustangs and their expensive high-end cars. And I found out, luckily, it cross-referenced to something in, believe it or not, a Ford Windstar minivan.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
But see, that was considered the, what was the first one before the Windstar? The
Aerostar.
Yeah, Aerostars. They were relatively lower power engines, and they tried to zuss it up for the Windstars, and they were running into the same things. So they basically had the entire parts catalog of the Ford company, and they stole the Mustang's fuel injectors and stuck them into a minivan, which just makes it really easy for me to get parts. And they're usually not abused like the ones in the Mustangs and the Crown Vics.
Yeah.
So I went over and did a little junkyard diving. They are an EV6. For those that don't know, injectors come basically in 2 flavors nowadays, EV1 and EV6. EV1 is the shorter, fatter injector with the large blocky connector, and the EV6 is the more slender one with a narrow connector. The break point was, boy, I'm going to screw it up. It was somewhere in the end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s where the swap over. Both injectors come in different lengths. That's where the difference. You can find an EV6 that would plug in and your Jeep system would fire it quite happily, but it's so long that you can't put your fuel rail on, or it's so short you can't get the O-rings. Right. So the ones that came in these cars, and there's all kinds of web stuff out there. If you look at junkyard diving for 4-pintle injectors for the 4-liter, they'll tell you exactly the part number, But nowadays you can actually buy them online from various companies where they've been flow matched, cleaned, and refurbed, or even new. And for $80-$90 for a set of 6, which is basically, when I go to the junkyard now, they're asking for $15 to $18 a piece for them. So at that point, it's not really cost effective to junkyard dive.
Yeah, that's when I talked about doing this I think back when I bought the lift, we went on a certain website with the large smiling A, and you found them. And I think it was like $69 for
a set of 6.
Yeah, I was like, that's not bad. And you're like, yeah, and they're ready to go.
And they're ready to go, and flow match, which it simply means that all the 6 injectors, when open for 5 milliseconds, will flow the same amount of fuel. Mm-hmm. And you can imagine that that's the only thing a computer does. It doesn't control the fuel. It controls how long it's open.
Right.
And if you don't flow the same fuel, you get really imbalanced, and you'll think you've got a misfire. Mm-hmm. And you don't. Actually, technically you do, but it's a fuel-caused misfire. So, long story short on that one, Brandon, it was a great conversation. I wouldn't go dumpster diving at this point for me, unless you enjoy that. I kind of like going and wandering through the scrap yards and going, ooh, can I make that work?
Mm-hmm. Some really cool stuff in there.
But if you're running fine now, I don't think 4 Pentel injectors, they're not going to suddenly make you have all the boost in the world. But because of the changes I did to my Jeep and increasing the airflow, which meant that I'm shortening the time that the fuel has to atomize, because I'm moving more air, which means more fuel faster into the cylinders. I needed to give my injectors a little bit of a leg up,
right.
And splitting that volume that was coming out of one hole into 4 smaller holes obviously makes for a finer misting. And Scott's been in my Jeep. You know that the result of all those parts together is a pretty impressive boost in torque.
Well, even behind you when you lift the wheel sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'm over there trying to row gears, trying to stay above the way. Oh, man, 170,000 miles in this engine. I'll just call you when I get there.
Well, and that works too. And I mean, mine's not like I rebuilt the block and stroked it and bored it. I mean, it's a regular 4.0 with 140K on it itself. Probably was 120 when we did the head swap.
Yeah.
But that's where that change makes the difference. And again, this is always one of those things I talk to folks about, is usually one piece at a time doesn't result in massive gains. It's taking it from, in my case, intake to tailpipe. Okay. Well, if you take the whole path and you make sure that all of the numbers meet or exceed your controlling element. Well, what's a controlling element in an engine? The pistons and the valve train. What is it expecting? What can the head flow in CFM? Try that in English, Kevin.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember the carburetor boxes in the parts store. It was CFM.
It was cubic feet per minute. Mm-hmm. I'm just getting my merge wixed.
That's Dave. It's not like I can talk.
Yeah, so
I get my thoughts mixed.
So in my case, and I think I've talked about this before, is Edelbrock, when I got the head, tells you this is the CFM this head can flow. Going above it is kind of a waste of money as far as components, but if you don't at least meet it, you're not going to produce the power the head is advertised to produce.
Right.
So I made sure my intake system could flow that many cubic feet per minute without an undue restriction. And there's calculations that can do that. Shops often use flow benches and things like that, but you can do something called Q over V. Q equals VA, which is flow equals velocity times area. And you can come up with numbers that are rough. And I just came up with a number plus 20 type thing to make sure on the intake. And then surprisingly enough, and that's because I built a heck of a lot of the intake system, the exhaust I bought. And, you go to MagnaFlow's website for their front Y pipe and cat assembly, and they will tell you what it will flow. They have data charts.
Nice.
And so I was able to look up and go, oh yeah, I forget, they have a name for their system that's the upgraded system, will flow equal or greater to what the head will put out. And then I just made sure that the muffler and tailpipe from Borla equal or exceeded that. And it was the same thing. I think one of the components I ended up having to call the tech support, maybe it was Borla, and say, hey guys, do you ever do any flow testing on this? And they're like, well, no, but what are you shooting for? And I said, this kind of CFM. Yeah, we're well over that. You're fine.
Cool.
And I took them at their word, and proof positive, I can actually attest to the fact that the Edelbrock head does what it says if you do the rest of the work that they recommend.
Yeah. Well, and that's why we always talk about reaching out and talking to these vendors because, again, we were, I can't remember if Kevin and I, if we were going to talk about this, but like being polite and cool with vendors, like take that time to establish that relationship because they want you to be happy with the end product. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it takes asking questions.
Yeah. Now I'm going to throw one last thing in there on this little diatribe about injector swaps. And that has to do with injector flow ratings.
Okay.
You can get in a lot of trouble. And we know somebody who did this, who went out and bought an expensive set of high flow injectors for an engine that wasn't really a high flow. First thing I made a mention earlier, injectors are controlled by the time the electrical pulse opens that needle to let the fuel flow.
Right.
That's it. Okay. You can technically adjust fuel pressure, but that's set at the factory. And if you're using the factory pumps in the early years, it was 47. In the later years, it's 56 to 58 PSI. And therefore, the orifice size and how long it's open controls how much fuel flows. Well, the orifice size grants you something called pounds per hour. In theory, if you were to hook up a 12-volt lead and turn this given injector on with 47 or 56 PSI behind it, whichever it's rated for, and let it run for an hour, theoretically, if it could run for an hour without overheating and melting, you would get that many pounds of fuel through the unit. Okay, that's all it means. And the early injectors up to, I believe, 99, again, this is kind of rough, I'm trying to remember my numbers, were 19 pounds per hour. Okay. The later EV6s are in the Jeeps are 22 and a half pounds per hour. I'm pretty sure on that number. You can vary that a little bit. All right. If you got, like, I think the high flow injectors that I put in were 24 pound per hour.
Okay.
But the computer only has so much fuel trim. And if you guys have ever thrown a meter on and said, oh, look at that, I'm pulling minus 0.3% fuel trim. All that means by fuel trim is the computer is going, oh, we're running rich. Shorten the pulse that I'm opening the needle. You follow me?
Yeah.
Or if I'm fuel trimming positive, I'm opening it longer. Well, the computer isn't infinite. Okay. Your intake valve is only open for so many milliseconds.
Right.
It's 2,000 RPMs. So it has to get that fuel in there. And if you're requiring a fuel trim, positive or negative, that's past that window of time, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
And the computer won't do that. They actually cut off at a maximum fuel trim and a minimum fuel trim so that you don't starve the engine or spray the back of the valve after it's closed. So if you go in with a 40 pound per hour injector in a Jeep, don't expect it to start and expect it to smell like raw gas throughout your shop.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got to stick with it. Now, if you're building your own system with your own valves and you understand, valve overlap timing, time open at RPM and that kind of stuff, you don't need to hear me saying this. You know what you're doing.
Right.
All right. And you're probably using an aftermarket computer that you can set up a really, really, really short pulse width to use a high flow injector. High flow injectors are typically used on lower RPM engines, believe it or not. I shouldn't even say that because it's also used on really, really high. What I'm talking about is those low industrial engines that the valves are open for a long time so that they can get the fuel in. But you can also use it on the high end drag car engines and those things, the Keith Blacks, where they're going so fast that they need to dump a crap load of fuel in a microsecond.
There's I watched it was on one of the drag racing shows where it showed an injector and a top fuel dragster, and it was in a clear container where it shows how much fuel just comes pounding out of that thing and wide open.
It dang near cuts open the little glass case.
It's like you're using one of those hydro cutters.
Yeah, so that's one of those things that I tell you folks, unless you're building a custom engine and really know what you're doing, stick with the typical bandwidth of the injectors. If you stray more than a little bit off either way, just 1% or 2%, you may find yourself in a no start, and your money you spent on those really fancy injectors may come back to bite you.
It's a balancing act.
It is.
Everything's got to work in conjunction.
But yeah, 4 pentals, they can have a benefit, and they actually make new ones now that are 6 and 8s. But the other thing to remember is the smaller pentals with more numbers. That's what I'm trying to spit out. The more pentals, the smaller the holes. The smaller the holes, the easier they are to clog up.
Right.
And if you get one tank of bad gas and you have one of these really special 6 or 8 pental, you can clog that up in a heartbeat. And to remind folks, a late model TJ, I believe it was from 03 up. It might have been even from 01 up, but I'm from 03 up. They don't have a fuel filter in line.
No,
all they have is a sock in the tank.
Yeah, actually, I can tell you right now, most GM, Toyota, and Nissan and other vehicles in the mid 90s they stopped.
Right. Well, it has to do with the fact that, do you see, go out and price a Holley inline fuel filter for a 60 PSI fuel system versus the little plastic thing that you used to see in cars. It used to be glass, but plastic with the little pleated filter. You put a 60 PSI pump behind that little plastic thing, it might hold, and it also might blow completely to smithereens and spray your engine with gas, which usually followed by a nice weenie roast. That was your engine.
Carburetors roasting over an open fire.
Yeah. So, guys, those little clear see-through filters, most automotive carburetors ran at between 2 and 5 psi.
Little mechanical fuel pump off the camshaft.
Yeah, and it had to be stallable. You know what that means is when the float bowl closes, the pump's still running and it can't burn out. It's got to be able to either be deadheaded or have a bypass loop in it. So there's a whole bunch of technology and history you probably didn't need to know, but that's your world in fuel injectors. And so thank you, Brandon, for asking those questions.
Yeah. So do you want to take a quick little break before we tip your tire in the garage?
Sure.
Whole thing. Hey, Jeepers. It's Scott again. Just as always, don't forget the 4x4 Radio Network, our YouTube page, our Patreon page if you'd like to help the show grow. As we always, thank you to our corporate Patreons and to our regular Patreons. So with that, I'm going to tip your tire on in back to the show, and we'll be right back after this. This is the message. Hi, I can't talk today. Here we go. Hey guys, welcome back. But I just want to take a quick moment. While this show is, after it's recorded, I'm going to be helping out at an event, the Florida Trail Team Challenge. Going to be out there and covering the event with Mark, and I'm going to see some really cool stuff. Hopefully, no one gets hurt. It's
a different nice. Mark from the other ones we've talked about. This is Mark Lawson of the Jeep Lab. He's one of the key sponsors and organizers of the Florida Trail Team Challenge. It's actually started already.
Yeah.
We saw the pictures up there. And so Scott decided to go up on the coldest, rainiest day they could have.
Yay. I'm gonna nothing like duck weather.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that joke was foul. So Kevin, you got anything for the garage today for us, or?
I thought I just had a whole talk on garage stuff.
Well, everyone loves the tech. Everyone really loves the tech.
That's what you keep saying. But no, I guess the biggest thing lately from a garage perspective is I have been over working with Shane on we'll call it what his wife Mel wants to call it, which is the Baby TJ project. And just continuing on the tweaking. I talked last time about replacing the frame haunch, and it's now gone out and done a few miles, and Shane deliberately went out and hit a few of those railroad crossings and speed bumps to see if we could crack anything.
Yeehaw!
Yeah, nothing has opened up, and they're sitting at this crossroads. They kind of want to lift it, but they kind of like it in stock because it gets all of the comments, from everybody with, "Oh my God, is that a stock TJ?"
Yeah.
Is it the last one in the state? I haven't seen one. The tires fit the wheel wells. You don't have to use a ladder to get in.
I was actually almost tempted because there's a pain colored TJ.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah,
one.
you saw that one, and I'm like, that would be nice.
Nope.
No,
you don't need a third Jeep.
I don't need it.
You want it, but you don't need it. And I guess the key from the shop perspective on that is really paying attention when you're looking at your Jeeps, whether you can fix them. We're going to be doing, and I've mentioned it a couple times, but schedules have been tough. We're collecting information. A lot of people have asked us both online and at events about our friend Bob's LS swapped YJ.
Yeah.
And he kindly brought over 24 in progress photos. And we're going to do a little video, and we will make sure that you all get opportunities to see it when the time comes out. Mm-hmm. It's a little more than the video walk around. This is kind of a...
We're branching out a little bit.
Yeah, we're gonna. Well, actually, Scott is going to interview Bob and me, since I helped Bob put a lot of the pieces together. But by no means did I build Bob's Jeep.
Right.
I helped Bob in areas where he, wanted help, wiring, measuring and setting things up, rebuilding a transfer case. But Bob did all the body work and steel work. Bob actually put the motor mounts in. He had a friend of ours, Ron, weld them in for him. But he spotted everything. And I'll do a little spoiler on the thing, is that he admitted that he had his heart in his throat right up to the time. And we have a video clip when I started it for him the first time. And you hear me, okay, ready, contact. And it lit off with a half a turn of the key. And he said he finally took his first breath in probably 6 months.
Yeah.
Or full breath in 6 months when the thing came to life. And that's all I'll tease you with right now.
Right.
But it's going to be fun because we're going to interview him. And during the interview, we're going to be showing steps along the way photos. And if we need some technicals, we'll do some additional videoing and stuff like that with a final wrap up as a walk around. Because I will admit, Bob's handiwork as far as prepping the body and then, the placement of components, it's gorgeous. It's a 95 YJ, and it's now running an 08 LS that's been tuned and adapted. You've seen us talk about the tuning and that stuff properly so that it actually runs the YJ at the YJ's weight and tire size and everything. So a full tune, correct for the Jeep. We got all of the dash, and we've talked about this before, to operate using the 08 as its feed. And it only took one little match adapter because we could not find a tachometer unit out of a YJ that had a V8 pulse count. You could get it 6 or 4.
Right.
You couldn't get a V8 in a YJ. And so we had to use an adapter unit, a module. But that's the only standalone adapter piece in that. We were actually able to bring all the data into the YJ Dash and make it actually report correctly on the status of a motor that was built a decade later. So that's not too shabby.
No.
So it should be a lot of fun to get out there with that. So yeah, otherwise the garage has been kind of quiet because it's full of boxes.
Yeah. Getting close, man.
We are not to the new shop yet, folks, just getting to the new property. We're getting there, and then we have a big move, and we've got to sell things here and, get set up over there, and then I've got to go build the shop, but I am going to build the shop.
Oh, yeah. And I'm actually branching out myself. I'm looking at properties, too, because there's lots of good, we always keep saying about lots of good steps coming up, but there's just, I'm feeling a calling, call of the wild, whatever, but no, I look for the challenge of this video. It's going to be fun because I get to work on my interview skills because I will be interviewing, like I said, both Kevin and Bob. And it's going to be really interesting because everyone asks about engine swaps, and we're going to kind of cater this to why you did it this way.
We want to talk to somebody, not me, not the engineer, but the guy who said, I have a YJ with a 4-cylinder. I'm unimpressed.
Yeah.
I want to do a V8 swap. Why? Mm-hmm. What drove you? What was your thought process? Why did you go Novak? What were your choices? We want to talk through the mind of a Jeeper that decided to pull the trigger. And all honesty, you go to any of the events here in Florida that he goes to, all he has to do is pull up this little army green.
Why, Jay?
It's not that little because he's got it lifted.
Yeah.
And open the hood. And he has a ring of people around that Jeep because it's not done as a screaming, loud, lifted, underlit, all that kind of stuff, chrome polished. It looks like a working Jeep. And the engine swap looks like it could have come that way from the factory.
Yeah.
And that catches a lot of people off guard going, wait a minute, there's a real fuse box in there. There's real this, Yeah, it works. So we want to get inside Bob's head and understand the Jeep, why he built it the way he did. And I think that'll be a real interesting video for you guys. And we'll probably, I don't know, we may be able to pull a podcast out of that too, as far as the voiceovers. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be interesting. Again, because lately we've been getting those questions about engine swaps. And like we've always said, if you guys have something you want us to talk about, again, we've been actually getting a good influx of messages and feedback from you guys. We want to have that interaction because Kevin and I have said from the beginning, this is your show.
It really is.
And we're just the voice.
And, Scott just reminded me of something. And this is a neat thing that I just discovered.
What's that?
And initially, I'm going to start off very non-Jeep, but stay with me. Y'all have known that Nissan has their pickup truck, okay, the Titan.
Yeah.
And for a while, they came out with the Titan XL.
XD.
XD, yeah. You would know that, wouldn't you?
Sold parts for them.
And folks, they came with a Cummins engine. All right. Now, in the world of Jeep swaps, tell me that you haven't heard of a 4BT, and I'll say, what rock have you been crawled under? But the truth be told, the 4BT was never really certified as a automotive engine, and I use the word automotive advisedly. It was used in like bread trucks and delivery vans before registration was required by EPA. So technically, while 4BT swaps can work, they are not a very balanced engine. They were designed to be an industrial engine, and most people refer to 4BT swaps as bone shakers. And if you're into that thing, great. And it's a torquey little monster. It's basically the straight six with two cylinders shaft off. Then, of course, there's the six sevens and the other big Dodge diesels. People have talked about the R2.8, which is a Cummins engine, which is another little four-cylinder turbo. It's great, but you look at the numbers and they're not that impressive. So what's that got to do with the Nissan? I just found out that Cummins has decided to release the 5.0 V8 diesel as a repower with an EPA certification for models 13 and later.
Yeah.
Or earlier. And a lot of Jeeps fit in that 13 and earlier.
So just out of curiosity, what is a repower? What's the difference between doing that and just buying an engine out of a junkyard?
A repowered engine, A, is new.
Okay.
And B, the ECM is unlocked for you. Okay. It's not going to be preloaded with Nissan related requirements. It's there at Cummins as a power plant, pure and simple.
Okay.
It also comes with a standalone harness, not integrated with anything else. So when you're doing a swap in, you're already starting with a clean slate.
Yeah. Okay. Your engine wiring harness is done.
You will receive a manual that tells you what every wire is and every tube and plug and things are, what level of cooling you need, how many BTUs you need, what size pipe exhaust you need. In other words, it gives you a serious leg up, but I don't have a price yet. They are not posting the price. I'm sure it's not a cheap motor, but it does put out something to the tune of 350 odd horse, which may not sound like a lot, but in diesel world, that's not the key number. But it puts out 555 foot-pounds of torque. Folks, 555 foot-pounds of torque will move any Jeep up any hill you can get the traction to stick to.
Idling.
Yeah. And it's packaged to look like it'll fit. Am I buying one? I don't have that kind of money right now, but I'm interested. I am really interested. And we have a really nice Cummins dealership, only about, Ring Power is about 3 miles from the house. I just may have to go see if they got a tech guy that'll talk to me. Mm-hmm. And if he does, I'll let you know, and we'll share you the information. Right now, you can go to Cummins' website into their repower section, and you can just Google Cummins 5.0, and you'll get a link to their site. And it's an interesting read on the engine. And yes, you could go the junkyard route. I'm not saying that might not be a better way. I don't know enough right now. I just found it interesting to find that there is a certified repower engine, diesel, V8, turbocharged package that you could put in your Jeep.
I'm going to byline here real quickly because I know a lot of people are like, what's the big deal about certification? Because you said it 3 times now. Because of what I do,
yeah,
it's kind of important because let's just face facts that, we are in a changing world. And sometimes, I know in California, things have to be CARB certified.
Mm-hmm.
So there might come a time, luckily in Florida, we don't have emissions inspections, but where you're at,
or compliance inspections, period.
Yeah, but where you're at may have those.
Yep.
So yes, okay, I put in an LS motor from a different vehicle in a newer year. Is that EPA compliant? Mm-hmm. With these repower programs, from what you've explained, is that gives you your certification.
Yeah. You can work, usually if it's certified to 13, you can go backwards, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. Any of your older Jeeps will take it. And if the market's there, they may certify it for later years. Mm-hmm. Now, you go, 13, that's a long time ago. Well, yeah, it is, but there's a lot of older Jeeps out there, and those are some of the prime candidates for repowers. Mm-hmm. Imagine, if you will, some of your earlier JKs, and JKUs. Everybody talks about them being a little bit low on power with the slang term, minivan motors.
Yeah.
What if you could repower them, and make them diesel to boot? Yeah, it's one of those mystical things. A lot of people in the Jeep world understand torque is king. Torque is what moves you up and down the hills. Horsepower is great if you're on the Bonneville salt flats going for the top end. Because, folks, horsepower is a mythical term made up by James Watt of the steam engine fame to try and give a comparison to farmers who were doing work with plow horses.
Right.
And his numbers were somewhat creative. In the engineering, we learned that not many horses can do what he was talking about. But regardless, horsepower is a term of work, which is force over time. And as soon as you say over time, we're talking speed.
Right.
When you're just doing work, how hard can I pull? Can I make it go up the side of that mountain? Well, now you don't really care about horsepower. You care about torque. How hard can I twist that drive shaft? Mm-hmm. And we all know that diesels are capable of twisting the drive shaft into a solid steel breadstick.
Yeah.
If you're not careful. And, of course, if you're doing the sand hill or the gravel pit climbs, you need horsepower. That's work over time. That's a lot of work really fast. But for the rest of us, you're going to realize that doing a lot of work really fast takes a lot of fuel really fast. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't use it, it still burns a lot of fuel really fast. So nobody posts or really talks about the EPA fuel mileage on the new Corvettes.
Yeah.
And I get it. But for us, most of us who are trail riding, it's not like we want to move at tortoise space, but we're not up in if we're doing 10 miles an hour on a trail, we're booking.
Yeah.
Torque's king. Torque's where it lets you air down, approach an obstacle slowly, climb it, wrap that tire around it,
pull yourself
up that cliff wall. That's where torque is king. Horsepower would probably shred your tires in those situations.
One of the interesting things that was explained to me is that horsepower is how fast you get to the wall. Torque is how far you get through it.
Yes, or up it.
Yeah.
Preferably up it, Scott. Yeah. Preferably up it.
But you talk about how, speed and stuff like that. Remember, speed just breaks things faster.
Well, yes and no. But I get it. There's a whole side of me. I used to play in the drag strips, guys. It should come as no surprise to you that any type of motorsports where some sort of rubber wheel was on some sort of pavement, gravel, dirt, whatever, I played in it one time or another.
You told me the old war stories of you in the pits with the 4 9-inches and the rear ends and clutch pack.
Yeah, changing out. That's back when the dragsters we all ran Ford 9-inchers, even if you weren't in a Ford, because you had the center pumpkins and you would loosen the wheel flanges, pull the wheels out just 4 to 6 inches. You didn't remove them. And then you took all the bolts around, 16 or something like that, and the pumpkin would come loose in your hand. You could shove another pumpkin in real quick, put it back on tight, slam the shafts home, tighten the 4 bolts on either side, put your tires back on, reconnect your drive shaft, boom, you have a gear change. Now the quick changes were even quicker because they had a set of spur gears at the back of the pumpkin that the drive shaft drove the spur gear drove the pinion. And if you change those, you change your ratio.
There you go.
And they were really slick until they imploded. Because you'd hear those things sing, because spur gears are not quiet. They can be strong, but everybody lightened things up to get better quarter-mile times, and you'd hear this. And every once in a while, you'd hear that sing go, boom. Oh, he blew a rear end. Look at that. Oh, track crew's going to go. Oh, they're pissed at him. They got to clean up, get the oil dry out there.
Get out the sack of kitty litter.
Yep. So anyhow, folks, the garage has been a little quiet here. It's just been running around helping other friends, doing pretty non-exciting things, putting in what did I tell you, 550 linear feet of sprinkler line in a horse arena. Woohoo!
Yeah, he was just horsing around with a friend.
Me and a tractor were sitting there doing a lot of ground busting.
Oh, yeah.
So digging trenches, gluing pipe,
and then burying the pipe.
Buying pipe, finding, locating buried lines so we didn't break the ones that were expensive to fix. We didn't.
And I'm just handing out oil filters. Yay! So much joy.
Hey, I'm sorry. I just turned 64 this week. I'm retired and I've got to stay busy.
Yes. Yes, you do.
Oh, Lordy, 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 Lordy. Anyway, folks, we've kind of chewed the fat around, up the middle, down the side,
We had a really good talk about a lot of cool stuff. So if you guys want to send us Facebook messages, emails, that's great. onthetrailpodcast@gmail.com. I promise I will answer the emails as fast as I can.
You'll even send them to me going, this one's yours.
Yeah. Did you ever figure out what was going with the JK, or is it still a work in progress?
I cannot find. I've got the picture of the part, and I haven't found one that looks like that around here. I'm beginning to wonder if there's something funky in the photo. It looks like there's where one of the pan bolts on this particular JK has a sleeve or stud that fastens in, that holds the pan, and then it is extended down and had the mount for the exhaust pipe on it. And I'm wondering if it's an aftermarket spacer, because a lot of the lift kits came with aftermarket spacer assemblies to hold that pipe down so it cleared the drive shaft. Right. But the gentleman, and I'm sorry I forgot your name, I got it on the file, but that bolt that holds the exhaust broke, and he's trying to figure out how to get the other part off. And brute force may win out in this one. I think his name's Robert, but he was asking me if I had any tricks or thoughts, and my problem is I've just been trying to find a JK with that part that I've seen. Yeah. I went over to Ron's shop. I went over to Mark's shop. I got underneath them, and I even showed it to those guys. I said, "You seen a part like this?" And Ron's going, "No." Tommy, where'd you get that? I said, one of my listeners is asking the question. So we're wondering if, like I said, it could be a home built creation. And he doesn't know if he just puts water pumps on that extension and unscrews it, or will it break off the aluminum in the housing? And I understand his concern there, because having set my fair share of thread replacements, in the
Oh, yeah.
In the aluminum, and that's never as strong as the original. So, and right now, since both shops are supporting the event you're going up to, they're closed again.
Yeah.
And I can't just go out. It's not like either one of them keep a long library of vehicles there. And I have to rely on them to say, hey, I got one here that looks something like one you give me on the picture, and then I'll run over and look at it. So at this point, myself and 2 other shops are kind of scratching our heads on that one.
Yeah. Well, again, we do the best we can with that. But I do think it is time that we lock the hubs, put the Jeep in 4 low, and hit the trail. And as always, remember to take nothing but pictures, memories, and your trash when you do leave the trails, because we want to keep these trails open for our children and our children's children.
Yep. I want them to go out there and go, well, that's where Granddaddy got stuck and flipped the Jeep. Not really.
They're going to go there and go, and that's where Scott still hasn't installed all the parts.
Well, that's possible.
Hey, I deserve that.
No, my thought is one of these days I'll just sneak out there and break something so he has to put it in.
Well, he got two shots because I got another vehicle I can drive.
Give me a Sawzall in 15 minutes and he'll have to put the lift kit in.
Be right back and make sure my Jeep's in one part. But
hey, look, you drove it in a lot of parts when you first got here, and it was going clankety clank clank bang bang bang.
I am still fixing the multitude of sins, but hey, I'm getting there.
You're getting there. Well, folks, we appreciate your time. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Again, ideas would be welcome. We've been doing this for 5 years. I'm running out of things that are busted, that I haven't fixed already once or twice.
Yeah.
Or 3 times.
Oh, no, we're 6 years.
Oh, Lord, did we cross another anniversary?
Yeah, 6 years. Wow, I feel old.
I hate you.
And
let me put it this way. I was not all gray when we started this podcast.
And neither was my beard, actually.
Anyway, enough cheap shots at each other, folks. Thanks for listening. Feel free to like and subscribe to our Facebook page. Share the podcast with friends. We don't care. Share it in our posts out there. That's okay with us, too. We're not making money off this, nor do we really care to. This is just kind of a fun thing.
Yep.
Jeeps are like the eternal subject, And, by the way, the gentleman and this is another one off the cuff because I don't have it up for me to look at your name, but thank you for the comments about the fact that we're not playing in the political arena. And
yes.
No, that has nothing to do with Jeeps other than the fact that we need that gas.
Go ahead, buy the hybrid, please. Hey, my Jeep's a hybrid. I burn gas and oil. So.
But we appreciate that shout out, and we no. There's enough crazy people on the interwebs out there that have the answers to everything, and I'm struggling with Jeeps. I'm good.
We want to be the escape from that.
So, thank you. I appreciated the message.
Yep. All right, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Proceeding has been provided for entertainment only. Proper service and repair procedures are vital to the safe, reliable operation of all motor vehicles, as well as personal safety of those performing those repairs. Standard safety procedures and precaution, including the use of safety goggles and proper tools and equipment, should be followed at all times to eliminate the possibility of personal injury or improper service which could damage the vehicle or compromise its safety.
What he said. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
This has been a Bent Axle Media production.